Hi, everyone. My name is Willie. Welcome to the Student Agencies Podcast. I am the president-elect for student agencies for the 2026 year. I am a rising sophomore in the hotel school. With me is Dan Karlin, CEO of Student Agencies, who graduated MBA at Johnson School in 2016. And today's guest is Carson Kotecki. He is a recent graduate of Cornell's Dyson School, where he earned his degree in applied economics and management with a concentration in strategy. At Cornell, Carson held two major leadership roles at student agencies as general manager of Hired Hands Moving Company and later as chief marketing officer, overseeing all agency businesses. He completed strategy internships at Macmillan Doolittle and Bank of America, where he ranked first among his analyst class and is set to join Capital One's analyst development program this August.
Thank you guys for having me. Very excited to be here.
Welcome, Carson.
Yeah, so Carson, let's start at the beginning. Can you tell us a little bit more about what drew you to student agencies?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a roundabout story, but I came to Cornell, enrolled in the Dyson School, and when I showed up to campus, I was dead set on becoming an investment banker, coming to one of the elite business schools in the country, and knew I wanted to study finance and do really hardcore financial analysis and just dive into that world of banking. And pretty soon after coming to Cornell, I realized that I really did not want to do that. I quickly started looking for different directions. I felt a little directionless at the start in the fall of my freshman year. And it was then that I was approached with an information session about student agencies, about the opportunity to get hands on entrepreneurial learning experience in running your own agency, your own business while you're an undergrad at Cornell. And feeling like I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, I jumped on it, applied, and was able to get the role as general manager at Hired Hands. And since then, I had really, really fallen in love with that. And honestly, that first role at student agencies has given me a lot of direction in what I see myself doing long term. And many of my experiences following that first role at Hired Hands has, been driven by that experience and, giving me some purpose and direction in where I see myself going, on top of preparing me for that.
Totally, yeah. So you mentioned how you realized you want to pivot from banking. Can you tell me, what made you realize that you didn't want to do that?
Well, it was a couple of different things. One was that early on when I was at Cornell, I joined a couple of finance organizations on campus, and once I got into the nitty gritty of learning about um, different financial, learning about the stock market and learning about, IPOs, learning about financial valuations of companies and things like that. I realized that while that's an incredibly essential part of the business experience at Cornell and in the world going forward, it wasn't something that I wanted to spend all my time on. It wasn't something that I wanted to make the core of my experience in my career. And so as I started looking for other experiences and eventually got the experience at Hired Hands, I quickly fell in love with the idea of needing to be a jack of all trades and needing to get experience in not only operations, but also in human resources, also in recruitment and in marketing and as well as the financial analysis. And so I found that holistic environment and being able to sort of be a jack of all trades was something I fell in love with.
So, Carson, what does the nitty gritty look like at Hired Hands? Like, what experience did you have? Tell us about a moment when you were like, "Oh man, looking back on it now, this was like a defining moment of my career."
Yeah. So one of the most defining moments I would say is um, the ability to stay calm under pressure when things don't always go to plan. So one experience I can particularly remember is in late May of 2022, which was kind of at the height of the busy season for Hired Hands. We had a lot of moves going on concurrently. And one of the real issues was staffing because we had, at the time, nearly $100,000 of moves going on within 1 week, whether it was short distance moves down the street or larger commercial moves for Cornell University or even long distance moves. We had one going on at that time from Ithaca, New York, all the way to Tacoma, Washington. And so being able to balance not only the execution of a job, but also being able to make sure the job is done well was something that I found to be much harder than it seems on the surface. And so, what that looks like is sometimes a little bit of handholding of your workers, sometimes a little bit of trusting of your workers, and finding that balance between giving your workers the leash and the leeway that they need to be able to complete their job successfully, but also more than adequately preparing them to succeed when you're not able to supervise.
Totally, yeah. And how would you say that running, hired hands and the student-run business perspective, how is it different from a corporate internship, like the one you've had at Bank of America?
Well, I can say while there's a lot of differences, it's definitely something that has prepared me unlike any other experience that I've had at Cornell. Mm, you know, Not to directly compare my experience at student agencies versus some of the specific organizations I've been on a part of outside of student agencies during my time at Cornell, but mm, I found that student agencies was especially impactful in the idea that I was actually doing rather than just working in a conceptual framework, rather than just doing things that were hypothetical. I was thrown into the deep end and forced to actually do. And what that does is you succeed and you fail. And when you succeed, you learn. And when you fail, you learn even more. And that is something that you don't get in a corporate environment until I would argue much, much later in your career. Even at internships like the ones I had at Macmillan Doolittle, the one I had at Bank of America, my role at those companies was limited in scope and scale because of the fact that I'm such a junior employee at the company. I mean, I work, very, very hard to be successful in all of my roles, but it's simply a matter of being the CEO of a company when you're 19 years old is not something that you're going to get to do until 10, 20, maybe even 30 years down the road at a large company. So
Yeah, and let's double
that's
click on that for a second. Like, how many employees did you manage? What kind of P&L did you manage? How many trucks? How many moves? Like, what did that look like? Give us the numbers.
Yeah, so very proud of this. We did over $400,000 in annual revenue my year. Throughout the year, we had a list of nearly 200 unique employees that we employed throughout the year. I don't have an exact number of moves, but we're looking somewhere in the hundreds of different unique moves, different unique clients, ranging from these short distance moves to labor jobs to just loading and unloading help to completing full service moves for Cornell University that went into the tens and thousands of dollars and took weeks to complete, organizing everything from the setup and labor to the transportation of the goods to the execution of it and making sure that things went smoothly. We had a marketing budget that was, in the tens of thousands of dollars, and our operating margins were able to be increased during my time at Hired Hands as well. So very proud of some of the work that we've done there, and we're able to hand it off uniquely to the next generation of student leaders after my time at student agencies, which I find is one of the most important and rewarding experiences you get during your time as general manager at student agencies is not only be able to learn from somebody who has already had your role, but then being able to, after you've succeeded in the role, be able to pass some of that knowledge down and keep the institutional success going as you transition out of the role and new general managers transition in.
Yeah, so out of the hundreds of moves that you've mentioned, as the top person, I'm sure you've heard of some horror stories or some moves that have gone horribly wrong. Can you tell me about a time where, just a move that to this day still haunts you or you still think about or look back on?
Oh man. Um The fact that it takes me a minute to figure out which one I'm going to choose should tell you a little bit about the experiential learning aspect you get. But one that really sticks out to me is a move for a client named Kevin that we performed over the summer. It was one that we had, and by we, I mean me, had drastically underestimated the amount of time it was going to take to do this move. It was a move from Ithaca, New York to New York City, Manhattan. Um, I was led to believe that the amount of things being moved was much smaller than the actual amount when we showed up, and consequently, the move not only took the better part of one day, but it bled into a second day, which required our employees to stay over in a hotel. We had to get more employees. We had to get a second truck, and so we ended up losing close to $3,000 on the move because with our long distance moves, we at the time had been doing fixed rate quotes that didn't vary based on the amount of actual time that the long distance move took. And so, one of the biggest learning experiences we drew from that is that we need a much more accurate way of gathering inventory. And ultimately, in collaboration with our chief technology officer, as well as some of my assistant managers, we decided to do away with our existing analog system of um, taking inventory of items being moved and move to a customer relationship platform called Movegistics, where we were able to then design digital forms that would take inventory of the items that were moved. We were able to create a more comprehensive list of what would be moved and therefore could offer not only a more accurate estimate on our end of the time that it would take, but also be more accurately able to quote we should charge for the move in order to make sure that we can maintain profitability as a company.
So you had to build a system because the current system wasn't working.
Yeah, and part of that experience is that you got to fall on your face in order to realize that you got to find a new solution.
But that's sort of the crux of the learning though, right? Is like you have sort of a painful experience. Learning, often the best learning is done through painful experiences, whether it's doing 100 push-ups or running 5 miles or going on a move where you lose a bunch of money. That's like the forcing function for improving the system, right? And so I would imagine that you're now probably taking some of these stories and applying them in the interviews that you've had to do to get your internships and then to get your full-time gig. How have these experiences influenced your ability, especially versus competitors in the same situation, to be successful in your interviews?
Student agencies at Cornell is an experience unlike many others. There's only a handful of student-run agencies throughout the entire country for undergraduate universities, and most of them are not at the scale that we operate at. And so being a part of student agencies allows you to have something on your resume that is nearly impossible to match by anybody else that's applying for your role. The people who interview you for these companies, and I had this happen at McMillan Doolittle, I had this happen for my interviews at Bank of America, and then eventually for my full-time interviews at Capital One. People are pretty much dumbfounded when you tell them, "Oh yeah, when I was a freshman in college, I ran a $500,000 moving company with 200 employees." That sounds insane. It sounds insane even saying it out loud. And so the idea that you can gather this experience and it's an opportunity that's afforded to you when you're so young, while being able to get the insight that you are able to get and the mentorship you're able to get from not just the people that work at student agencies, but also the alumni network and generations of 40 plus years of people who have had your exact same general manager role before you and are now going on to be some of the most successful alumni in Cornell are just unforgettable experiences that set you apart from pretty much everybody else.
Totally, yeah. I completely echo your thoughts about how Strange is so unique. There's no club, there's no program really, at Cornell or many other universities where you have that hands-on fail forward experience. Now that you're an alumni, and you've it's been a few years since you've been in, general manager position and CMO position. What made you want to come back and get back involved with the community?
Well, I think that that's one of the most beautiful parts about student agencies is just the closeness that everybody has and the fondness that they have for the organization many, many years, beyond their time at Cornell. I even just got coffee with an alum this past Saturday when I was in New York City for the weekend, and we talked about student agencies and the wonderful experiences we had and how it set us up for success, and how grateful we were for the opportunities that it afforded us. And I think that the unique nature of student agencies and the fact that it's been so beneficial for so many people that have gone through the organization over the more than 125 years that student agencies has been around, it makes it so that you want to give back. Because I sit here today with a wonderful future laid out in front of me, and I say to myself, wow, am I so grateful for the opportunities that were afforded to me and the experiences that I was provided by my involvement in student agencies. And it's only right that now I want to give back and help mentor that next generation of great leaders going through the organization.
Awesome. What would you say now? You're alum, you've been very successful in your college career, you have all this experience that we've just heard about. What would you say to an incoming freshman or a rising sophomore who maybe is just learning about student agencies about how to navigate their undergraduate experience at Cornell?
Yeah, just to clarify, are you looking for a student agency specific piece of advice or really
No, I think it's really like, because we don't want to be, tooting our horn all the time and saying, we're the be all and end all of business experience because we're not. We think we're a pretty good option. But I would say, you've done. I think you were on the sprint football team, if I'm not mistaken,
yeah.
and you had a lot of different academic experiences, a couple internships, plus the student agency stuff. You know, how does a person who's new to all this, looking back, if you could tell the freshman you, right, do this, don't do that, what would you say?
Yeah, and just to color things in for the people who aren't, familiar with my background, I was involved in a number of different organizations in addition to what you mentioned, Dan. Being a member of the sprint football team, I was also in a finance organization called Cuga Capital. Was in a couple of different consulting clubs. Was in the Cornell Marketing Club as well as played saxophone in the Cornell Jazz Band, and a few of other involvements on campus over my 4 years. So I would argue I had a pretty involved experience and, am incredible in my ability to, pull from a number of different communities on campus. And I think that there's really one core idea that my experience and advice boils down to for an incoming freshman, and that is the phrase seek discomfort. I think that coming to Cornell is a big step for anybody, especially someone like myself who came from the Midwest, didn't know anybody else coming to Cornell at the time. Really felt a little out of my element to start looking around and saying, wow, there's so many smart people. Wow, I really, really have to study to be successful here. And I think that leaning into the experiences that make you discomfort or that make you feel discomfort and make you uncomfortable can push you just the right amount to allow you to have some of the most rewarding experiences when you step through that door and embrace that discomfort that you're feeling. Oftentimes, the most rewarding and valuable experiences are sitting just on that other side of fear.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very philosophical.
And to wrap things up, what is how would you describe student agencies in one sentence?
One sentence. I would say where the next great generation of leaders go to, uh, begin their career. I think
Um,
that student agencies is, you know, a place where the smartest minds I've ever met come to gather for a shared goal of driving company success. And it's definitely the most rewarding experience that I had during my 4 years at Cornell.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Carson. Really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us.
Thank you guys.